rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. You'll have to excuse me. I'm trying to get the rest of the chats and stuff up. I'm running a little bit behind today. So there we go. Just trying to get my workspace set up appropriately because of the fact that, like I said, I'm running a little behind. Let's make sure of that. Yeah, there we go. All right. So 24 hours and more. 24 hours, more than 24 hours has passed since our great president, Donald Trump, has graced the Oval Office. Yes. So there we are, folks. There we are. Oh, I've already been chastised. 3 Chevys like, get it together, dude. Anyway, I'm working on it. Have you felt a collective sigh of relief across this great nation? I think I have. I think a lot of people have breathed that collective sigh of relief because we now have a real president in the Oval Office. Not a fake one, not a dead one, not one that's being propped up by the mainstream media, but a real president, a real leader, a real executive. So, yeah, just take that in. Just okay. Well, Donald Trump has had a fantastic and long-term amount of signing his name. I swear he probably before, Becky also points out, Becky over on Facebook also points out the whole world has breathed a collective sigh of relief. That is true because Hamas actually released some Israeli hostages last night. And also, too, believe it or not, the Taliban actually released an American hostage, too. So, and that wasn't even part of the whole deal. I mean, that wasn't even, I don't even think anybody really knew about that. But they went ahead and released an American hostage there. I saw an article about that. Yes, folks, the 4 years has finally gone. We've got breathing room again. And, President Trump, with his executive orders, has just sent the left into a tizzy. And he also, a couple of particular executive orders the left has just gone absolutely nuts about. And I'll get into some of that here in just a little bit. But yeah, they're just going nuts. And the typical stupid morons like Elizabeth Warren, Pramila Jayapal, Chris Murphy out of Connecticut. I haven't seen any Dan Goldman stuff. AOC was posting a few things yesterday, but she is another moron that's out there. And yeah, they're all going nuts over some of the things that the president is doing. And in fact, one of his executive orders has already initiated a lawsuit. And I'll get into that too here in just a minute. But let's go ahead and get things kicked off with our great Pledge of Allegiance. Today's Pledge of Allegiance is going to be led by none other than Bam from Rumble. She will be leading the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you are of mine, please stand. Remove your hat if you're wearing one like me. Place your hand over your heart, and let's go ahead and follow along with Bam as she recites our great Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I thank BAM for doing that absolutely fantastic Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to hear your rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself performing the pledge in your style. And then take that file, whatever it is, attach it to an email, send it off to me, send it to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. And I will get you added into the rotation for the pledge, which we play at the beginning of every single program. All right, tonight's headline sponsor is the Institute on the Constitution. The Institute on the Constitution is established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission, and that is to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.americanperspective.online, to sign up, and while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.americanperspective.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.americanperspective.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, go to constitution.americanperspective.online. Take a look at this thing. It's got 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are water and tear resistant. And there's no cheap glue binding here. This is stitched all the way through the leather and the pages, wrapped together. They have a 100-year warranty against materials and defects in workmanship. 3 Chevy says all contents within are endorsed by Donald J. Trump. That is true. That is true. And it also, like I said, has a warranty, a 100-year warranty against materials, workmanship, and material defects. Oh God, my rumblers are like saying all the things. They've heard this so often they could probably recite the damn thing themselves. But anyway, I digress. This is Buddy tested, Buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved, and my youngest whiskey warrior has ensured that the contents within will get you will help you to get your civics badge in Scouts. It will also probably help you to get your civics test taken care of. Don't forget it has sexy rounded corners that don't poke you in the rear end or other places. All right. So, yeah, if you want to get yours, head on to constitution.americanperspective.online. And you know what? With that collective sigh of relief, I'm going to tell you, there's probably going to be a lot more people carrying this thing around because the Constitution has now become in vogue once again, as well as being MAGA. MAGA is apparently in vogue now. So anyway, go to constitution.americanperspective.online to get yours. And also don't forget to check out the rest of the Institute on the Constitution's offerings. And believe me, they have a lot of good stuff over there. And I thank them for allowing me to be an affiliate right there. All right. According to 3 Chevy, the Constitution will help you to get Facebook jail time. I don't think so anymore because, you know, Mark Zuckerberg was at the Trump inauguration and has been kissing Trump's butt here recently, or at least that's what the left thinks. Speaking of Facebook, I broke down And I do have an Instagram account, the American Perspective with Rick Institute or Instagram account is live. Not a whole heck of a lot there right now, but I know that like Instagram and YouTube Shorts, they do short videos. And as soon as things calm down in other areas of my life, you'll probably see even sometime in the near future, you'll probably see some new short videos on those particular websites. So, and I might actually even launch a shorts channel on Rumble as well to basically post the same thing across the board. Bam, you missed your Pledge of Allegiance. Bam just came in to Rumble's chat. So, all right. Let's go ahead and continue. Okay, so you know that, and I don't want to talk about Joe Biden that much, realistically, because Joe is out, Trump is in, and that's the way things go. But I do want to point out that I'm not the only one who has pointed out, by the way, and 3 Chevy, I'm not talking about like physical shorts. Anyway, anyway, I was saying the whole thing about Biden's last minute pardons. I'm not the only one that actually think that is indicative of the Biden family corruption and the total corruption that has been going on in our government in terms of Biden for his entire career, or at least pretty much most of it. When he kind of finally figured it out, that he could be corrupt and not get caught, however long it took him to figure that out. But I'm not the only one here in the Daily Fetched. This is, boop, there it is. So former Clinton pollster says that Biden's last minute pardons shows total corruption. So former Clinton pollster Mark Penn has slammed Joe Biden for pardoning Anthony Fauci, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, retired General Mark Milley, and members of the January 6th committee. He basically says the corruption is now so obvious, even high-profile Democrats are speaking out. Penn published a lengthy screed on Twitter, also known as X, torching Biden for the move. So Penn's last words, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Penn's last words, he basically says, the last straw, last-minute pardons for Biden's political accomplices were the plan all along. Pardons for drug dealers and commutations for murderers were just a cover for the main act of these pardons and his son, all done after the elections have passed. The only administration to try to jail political opponents was not Trump's, but Biden's. And it was the voters who rejected it with all of their votes. There were legitimate questions on whether Fauci lied about his funding gain-of-function research. No, it's not questions. He did lie. Anyway, whether Miley broke the chain of command. Oh, nope, he did. He had unauthorized communications with the Chinese, broke the chain of command to do so. And whether or not the January 6th committee has coached witnesses. Yep, they did, and had ex parte communications, illegal ex parte communications with those witnesses. So all of those things happened. And he continues and says, they may have all been right and truthful, but there were questions, and they will all go unresolved now. But Biden was elected lying to the public about his son's business, which was eventually uncovered, sought to win re-election, hiding his infirmities, which was also eventually uncovered, he says, and genuinely abused his office in the closing days of his presidency as his low ratings sink even lower. Yeah. So anyway, I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people out there who are saying the exact same thing. And don't get me wrong, too. There is a litany of Democrat morons that all said when Trump was about to leave office and was talking about when Trump was talking about passing pardons for his family and stuff, there were a lot of things, a lot of Democrats that were all saying, yeah, that would be abuse of power and so on and so forth. So, sorry, had to take a drink there. So, yeah, once again, I mean, all of these pardons and everything else, it just proves, in my mind, without a shadow of a doubt, of all the corruption that happened during the Biden administration. Let's see. Also, too, yeah. So let's shift gears and let's go ahead and talk about Trump, because Trump is doing great things and he hasn't even actually been in office more than 48 hours yet. Just fantastic stuff. Take in the breath. Go. Yes, the whole nation, in fact, the whole world has breathed easier and is breathing easier. So, yeah. So there we go. Here in the Daily Fetched also, I've got several Daily Fetched articles, but here in the Daily Fetched as well, Trump wastes no time, ends Biden-era policies with mountain of executive orders. And yes, he signed a bunch of them in front of the press. He also went and signed a few others. But he essentially started off by rescinding 78 executive orders left over from Biden. So he withdrew the U.S. from the Paris Climate Accords, which, according to Trump, said that he would save the U.S. about $1 trillion just by that on its own. Secondly, he repealed a 2023 memo from Biden that banned oil drilling in 16 million acres in the Arctic, declaring that he would fill up the strategic oil reserves and export U.S. energy. Now, don't forget that the Biden administration drained our strategic petroleum reserves and took them to their lowest levels since inception. Trump issued a memorandum that implemented a regulatory and hiring freeze on the government until the new administration could fully take the reins. So there's that. He issued an executive order preventing government censorship of free speech. And I think personally that executive order is kind of redundant, because the First Amendment is obviously in play, but apparently he's just basically affirming the fact that, hey, the First Amendment prevents the government from censoring speech. We are now going to make sure that nobody else, we're not going to use NGOs to try and censor speech at this point. Let's see, what else did he do? He also signed a document ending the weaponization of the government against political opponents, which, you know, the whole purpose of Joe Biden pardoning his family was in regards to that. That was Biden's claim of all those preemptive pardons. So apparently that's no longer going to be an issue, according to the new president. The order itself is going to direct the Attorney General to investigate the government activities over the last 4 years also. It said, the order said that the U.S. government will identify and take appropriate action to correct past misconduct by the federal government related to the weaponization of law enforcement and the weaponization of the intelligence community. Now, it didn't stop there. He also ordered all government departments to address inflation. Then from that, those were some of them, but he also then returned to the White House and signed over 200 additional executive orders, all of them, of course, to undo Biden's legacy, during which time he also issued pardons for about 1,500 of the J6ers, who were wrongly charged over January 6th and the riot at the U.S. Capitol. Now, this is the first one, by the way. This is the first one that the left is really pissed off about. There were quite a few comments from the left about the fact that, you know, all of these people who were, quote, beating police officers and all these other things that they essentially were being pardoned for, you know, attacking the police. It's kind of interesting that none of them are saying anything about the insurrection anymore, the quote unquote insurrection, because it wasn't an insurrection. But anyway, so yeah, he also signed a bunch of other executive orders that are not part of this article. One of them apparently was that he reinstated soldiers discharged for vax refusal, meaning the COVID-19 vax refusal, including bringing them back with back pay. Apparently, he also signed an executive order creating the Department of Government Efficiency. And also signed an executive order that says no remote work for government workers. So there's, you know, a bunch of those. But he also signed a decision that Joe Biden did right before Joe Biden left, which was another thing that Joe Biden tried to screw the government. See, you know, the funny thing about this is that for a long time, everybody was like, hey, executive orders, Joe Biden's put out an executive order. And as I've told you on this program, executive orders are not permanent. They are not law. They are and can be overturned by the incoming administration. So any of these executive orders that were put out by Joe Biden throughout his term, they were all open to being overturned, including some of the ones that people like Jasmine Crockett were exalting, and talking about how, you know what, Joe Biden just said this is what's going to happen. Joe Biden, and realistically, if you wanted to carry it even further, even Donald Trump doesn't have those kinds of powers in the executive branch. The laws, anything that is a law has to go through the legislature, has to be put in place by Congress, has to be signed into law by the president, and then, of course, has to be enforced. Well, one of the things that Biden did right before he left is he pulled Cuba, the country of Cuba, off the list as a state sponsor of terrorism. Well, Trump basically reversed that and said, nope, that's not going to happen on my watch. He reinstated Cuba as a designated state sponsor of terrorism for it. Biden administration removed the designation of Cuba as part of an agreement to free political prisoners in the country. And so due to the agreement, Cuba released some political protesters. Some of them were arrested while protesting the government in 2021, according to CBS News. Marco Rubio said in his confirmation hearing that restrictions would be imposed on Cuba, which, by the way, Marco Rubio is the first of the cabinet to be fully installed, I should say, or affirmed, actually is a better term, affirmed by the Senate in Trump's cabinet. Marco Rubio was the first one. The Trump White House also put out a list of restricted entities, many of which are Cuban entities. The Cuban president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, criticized Trump's actions, calling them an act of arrogance and disregard for the truth, according to Politico. So, yeah. Anyway, Big sigh of relief there. Well, he also, as a part of his executive actions, he also ripped the security clearances from the 51 spies who lied. Well, I already told you that he was going to suspend their security clearances. But here's the thing that he added as a part of that order. He added that they're going to he authorized further investigation into those involved with the publication of that letter. That's right. He has said that, hey, we're going to have further investigation into this particular case, and he requires, as a part of the order, the Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the Director of the CIA, to revoke those clearances, and then go and, within 90 days of the order, the DNI, in consultation with the Director of CIA, shall submit a report to the President through the National Security Advisor that details any additional inappropriate activity that occurred within the intelligence community by anyone contracted by the intelligence community or anyone who held a security clearance related to the letter signed by the 51 former intelligence officials. So this is, his executive order. He is working on cleaning house. It also apparently demands that the DNI submit an assessment within the report, providing recommendations to prevent intelligence officials from inappropriately influencing domestic elections in the future. It also seeks any recommendations for any kind of disciplinary action that should be taken against anyone who has engaged in inappropriate conduct related to the letter signed by the 51 former intelligence officials. Yep. So he is starting to work on that cleaning house. Now, in addition, he publicly fired 4 Biden administration appointees and also says that there's more to come. So he said, said, quote, "My presidential personnel office is actively in the process of identifying and removing over 1,000 presidential appointees from the previous administration who are not aligned with our vision to make America great again." He wrote this on Truth Social. Okay. In the post, he named 4 people who were going to be dismissed so far. Those 4 are Jose Andres from the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition, Mark Maley from the National Infrastructure Advisory Council, Brian Hook from the Wilson Center for Scholars, and Keisha Lance Bottoms from the President's Export Council. His post concluded in the characteristic from The Apprentice. That's right. "You're fired." That's right. He said that he was going to announce more names of appointees that would be dismissed. So, yeah, he's already going and like kicking butt and taking names. So, yeah. So anyway, let's see. Oh, so while the president was sitting and signing many of these executive orders, he was being asked questions by the press corps. And he was sitting there firing off answers, left, right, whatever, all over the place. And as a part of that, Peter Doocy, okay, asked the question with regards to the tradition that the outgoing president leaves a letter for the incoming president in the Resolute desk. And while they were talking back and forth, Ducey did ask President Trump, did President Biden leave you a letter? Trump replied back and said, you know what, he may have. And then he pushed back from the Resolute desk asking, don't they leave it in the desk? So he opened a desk drawer and then went, oh, and he pulled out an envelope. Now, reporters, of course, immediately started asking him, hey, what was in the letter? What was in the letter? And they wanted him to read it. And he kind of teased them by saying that, hey, I could read it here on the spot. And he looked back at Peter Ducey and said, thank you, Peter. It could have been years before I found it. And then Trump added, maybe I'll read it first, and then I'll make that determination as to whether or not to tell people what was in it. So he also, at the time, reminisced about the fact that he had left a letter for Biden in 2021 when he had departed the White House after his first term in office. And so, yeah, he just, he didn't say what was in the letter. I don't think I would have said what was in the letter either, at least not in front of the press corps right then and there. Although then again, maybe I would have. I mean, if I wanted to embarrass Joe Biden, I probably could have, could have at least opened it, kind of skimmed it really quick to make sure there was nothing untoward in there, and then read it out loud, kind of like what you do with birthday cards and things like that. But anyway, so, anyway, I'm watching my rumblers are off topic. So I don't know if we're ever going to find out what is in that letter for sure. As far as that goes, I honestly don't know. Well, another one of Trump's executive orders, which this one is just driving the left totally insane. This one in particular, out of all of the executive, I mean, don't get me wrong, the January 6th pardoning was, one of those things that kind of drove the left a little crazy. But yeah. This one particular one in the situation, yeah, this one has really kicked off the socials. Everybody is talking about this. Elizabeth Warren says it's unconstitutional for him to do this. Adam Shifty Schiff is talking about, there's no way that this is going to stand, all these other things. So what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the executive order that points out protecting the meaning and the value of American citizenship. So this EO was put out and has really got, now this, as you can see here on the screen, this is directly from the White House, whitehouse.gov. And you can see here, he goes and he says, by the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. The privilege of United States citizenship is a priceless and profound gift. The 14th Amendment states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. That provision rightly repudiated the Supreme Court of the United States' shameful decision in Dred Scott versus Sanford in 1857, which misinterpreted the Constitution as permanently excluding people of African descent from the eligibility for United States citizenship solely based on their race. But, he says, The 14th Amendment has never been interpreted to extend citizenship universally to everyone born within the United States. The 14th Amendment has always excluded from birthright citizenship persons who were born in the United States but, quote, not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Consistent with this understanding, the Congress has further specified through legislation that a person born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a national and citizen of the United States at birth. And he calls out 18 U.S.C. 1401, generally mirroring the 14th Amendment's text. So he continues on and he talks about how the privilege of United States citizenship does not automatically extend to all persons, okay, to all persons born in the United States, because he points out that when the person's mother was unlawfully present in the United States and the father was not a United States citizen or a lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth, so that's one category that was not considered a natural born citizen. Two, when that person's mother's presence in the United States at the time of said person's birth was lawful, but temporary, such as, but not limited to, visiting the United States under the auspices of a visa waiver program or a visiting on a student, work, or tourist visa, and the father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time. So that's his reasonings as to why he did this. Believe it or not, I kind of agree. That being said, he now sets out the policy. He says, it is the policy of the United States that no department or agency of the United States government shall issue documents recognizing United States citizenship or accept documents issued by state, local, or other governments or authorities purporting to recognize United States citizenship to persons when that person's mother was unlawfully present in the United States and the person's father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth. And then two, he says, when that person's mother's presence in the United States was lawful but temporary, and the person's father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth. So basically what he's saying here is he is essentially saying, and believe me, this is targeted directly toward the anchor babies term analogy, which is essentially that somebody can cross the border, be here illegally, they have a kid, you know, the kid is born here on United States soil, and the illegal parents, the illegal aliens that brought him here, have to stay here because that kid is a United States citizen now because of birthright citizenship. That's directly what this is targeting. Okay. Now, he does point out that the subsection A, which I just read, shall apply only to persons who are born within the United States after 30 days from the date of this order. Now, the order went in on January 20th. So persons born after that 30-day period are now no longer United States citizens by birthright, according to this, this executive order. Now, this has turned the left upside down. And the reason being is because of the fact that they are basically saying, well, it's settled law. It's settled law. And while the Supreme Court has upheld oftentimes people who have been born in the United States, okay, from foreign countries, the Supreme Court has also upheld that visiting dignitaries, their children are not U.S. citizens. And in fact, what a lot of people don't understand is that prior to 1866, for an example, the Indians, the American Indians, the Native Americans that were here on this land as we were expanding our government and our statehood across the United States, the grand land, as we were adding states and everything else to this, they were not considered United States citizens, even though they had existed here. Technically were born here, but they weren't considered United States citizens because of the fact that they had, and this is a key point, that they had allegiances to their tribe. And in fact, even all the way up to the point of, all the way up to the point of the whole United States, the entire country that we now know, with the exception of Alaska and Hawaii, even then, they weren't granted, the American Indians were not granted citizenship in the United States because they were still considered to be citizens of their own nation. And so they're not part of the United States because they were not part of the United States in terms of the idea of being subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So this is, I guarantee you, it is going to go to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is going to have to take a look at this. The Supreme Court has had several of these cases come up, and they have been interpreted, for the most part, to be that, hey, if you're born within the borders of the United States, you're pretty much an American citizen. The challenge, of course, with this is there are a lot of nuances in regards to this particular scenario. And the reason being is because, again, that point of in the subject or subject to the jurisdiction thereof, there is some organizations such as the Heritage Foundation, which talks about birthright citizenship, and says that there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the 14th Amendment. So in here, what it talks about in regards to this is that critics claim that anyone born in the United States is automatically a U.S. citizen, even if their parents are here illegally. They mention that the original meaning of the whole 14th Amendment, which includes that subject to the jurisdiction thereof, refers to a political allegiance of an individual and the jurisdiction that a foreign government has over that individual. So here's kind of the case that I would make. All right. First of all, when you become a naturalized citizen and you take that oath before you are given citizenship, you are required as a part of that oath to renounce all ties to your other country, to your home country. The reason for this is because the American government does not recognize dual citizenship. This harkens all the way back to the original common law in England, which there's a lot of basis in our current laws today in common law of the English folks and the English common law back in the day. And the reason why they say that is because back for English common law, it was assumed that if you were born within the English monarchy, anywhere within its lands, that you automatically were subject to the jurisdiction of the English king, and you automatically had allegiance to said king, because in the monarchies back in the day, they didn't expect that way. If you were born within a certain realm, you automatically had a legion, an allegiance to that particular king. Now, the question is that's more than likely going to come up is, well, we don't recognize like the king, all right, but we do recognize allegiances. And in this particular case, the Heritage Foundation is exactly correct. The original meaning was dealing with political allegiance, because you also have to remember the 14th Amendment was placed right after, or was put into play after the Civil War. And so it was designed originally to bring all of the slaves into the United States as citizens as they were freed. Okay. So that's essentially one of the arguments. Now, birthright citizenship by itself, because again, while it's been argued in court, the idea of birthright citizenship itself, according to the Heritage Foundation, they claim has been implemented by executive fiat, and not because it was required by federal law or the Constitution itself. So, again, it goes back to the idea subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And so you've got to ask the question, okay, what does that actually mean? So yeah, there's arguments on both sides. It's going to be very interesting to see this hit the Supreme Court, because it probably will. I can almost guarantee you it will, in terms of all of that. So the key here is, in terms of how it's going to get there, my wonderful Washington State Office of the Attorney General, the newly elected Attorney General, Nick Brown. Nick Brown has already filed. He is leading a multi-state federal lawsuit that's going to challenge President Donald Trump's order attempting to unilaterally strip citizenship from Americans across the United States, including thousands of babies born in Washington each year. So this is the statement from the Attorney General in Washington State, right here. And you can see the lawsuit that was filed in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Washington was immediately joined by Oregon, Arizona, and Illinois. What's common across all those? Well, they are all Democrat-run states. So the complaint that they filed asserts that President Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship in the United States violates the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and the Federal Immigration and Nationality Act. The lawsuit asserts that the president has no authority to override the Constitution. Really? I wonder what Biden has been doing all this time. Wonder what, FDR did, doing all of the things that he did by putting and implementing things like Social Security, and Obama in implementing ACA. Okay? So anyway, it continues here that has no and that no constitutional provision or law empowers him to determine who should or should not be granted U.S. citizenship at birth. So the Immigration and Nationality Act, I've already told you about the 14th Amendment, but the Immigration and Nationality Act states that a person born in the United States, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which again, that's what President Trump was pointing out, is a national and a citizen of the U.S. at birth. He goes, if allowed to stand, the unconstitutional and un-American order would cause thousands of newborns and children in Washington to lose their ability to fully and fairly participate in American society as citizens, despite the Constitution's guarantee of their citizenship. So Brown stated that his commitment to this office and all the people of Washington is, we will be prepared. We will do everything in our power to defend the rights of Washingtonians. And our newly elected idiot governor, who I thought Inslee was bad, but this guy's probably going to be even worse, Bob Ferguson, also criticized the Trump administration's attack on birthright citizenship. So, again, I think a lot of this is going to end up being defined as to how do you reconcile the idea that a person born here in the United States with parents who have allegiances elsewhere, meaning that they were born and are citizens of other countries, whether it be Mexico or Canada or any other place, how are we going to reconcile all of that? And buddy, I'm sorry, I disagree with you on this point. You said anyone born on U.S. soil is automatically subject to the laws thereof. That is not true. A visiting foreign dignitary is not. And how often do we have criminals who commit criminal acts here in this country and we deport them rather than put them into prison because they are a citizen of another country? So not everybody, I mean, granted, you know, a person born, but there are nuances with regards to all of this. And the nuances, I think, are legitimate questions. And I do think that the Supreme Court of the United States, however, being under John Roberts, is really probably not going to either take this up or which if they don't take it up, that means the executive order stands. But I do believe that they're going to have to weigh in on all of this and decide and make the designation and the determination from a legal standpoint what the idea of subject to the jurisdiction thereof actually means. Because again, the idea of having people come here just to have a baby so that they can stay here in the United States, that's like, I don't know. It's just, to me, it's again, it's a sticky situation. Now, you could basically say that, hey, just define it simply as if one parent or the other is an American citizen, then the child can be determined to be American citizen. Now, I can tell you that I had a stepsister who was born in Germany, and Germany recognizes dual citizenship. Now, she was born on one of our military bases over there, which technically is American soil. Germany recognizes dual citizenship. And so therefore she had the option, she was an American citizen, but she had the option to also become a German citizen, should she desire it. So I think a lot of it is going to be dependent upon how you know, either America decides that, hey, we can now we now start recognizing dual citizenship, which, by the way, Teddy Roosevelt had a great speech where he was talking about this exact thing, where he had mentioned the fact that, you know, you should have zero allegiance to anyone else. You know, zero allegiance to anyone else. So the question kind of becomes, again, you know, either, and I think part of the confusion comes from the idea, like with the naturalization oath, you have to rescind all allegiance to that other country. No matter what, when you come here to become naturalized, you are literally dropping everything, renouncing your citizenship and everything else to that other country to become naturalized here in the United States. Well, if birthright citizenship is such that you don't have this functionality, then how are we going to assure ourselves? How are we going to assure ourselves that you have no other allegiances? Which again, some of this was born out of necessity with things like wars against France and that kind of situation. So As much as I would like to say that just because you're born here, you are here, I think that the qualifier might come down to be you are born here and you have parents, or at least one parent, who is a U.S. citizen. And that honestly would resolve everything. That would answer pretty much almost every single question with the entire thing. But again, in a case that's going to go to the courts, I'm fairly certain it's going to go to the courts. So, yeah, we'll see it. We'll see it again. I'm telling you, we'll see it again. We'll see it throughout the entire space with regards to this whole question on citizenship. But also, too, just as a historical fact, there was a question back in Madison's day where there were questions with regards to people who came here. And you remember, we're, you know, the Pilgrims, the original founders, they weren't citizens of the United States because the United States didn't exist. And so there was a question in particular, this story, okay, comes in with the whole national birthright rule applicable within the states prior to the year 1866. And Madison made it clear the rules of who is a citizen or alien properly belonged with the states. So we didn't even recognize like federal. It was up to the states to decide who was a citizen up to 1866. And let me see, I'm kind of scanning really quick here. So, there was a contestation of South Carolina election of Representative William Smith in the House of Representatives in 1794 in particular. Madison said that the question of whether Representative Smith had been a citizen of the United States for the 7 years at the time of the Declaration of Independence rested entirely with the Constitution of South Carolina. So we didn't even use it as like deciding, the states decided whether or not you were a citizen back then. So after the Revolution, states retained only portions of common law that were applicable in their local circumstances. Like I said, in England, the general rule of thumb, although it wasn't a hard rule, because obviously the king could change it whenever he wanted, but every person born within the king's allegiance and within any of the king's realms or dominions was considered a natural born subject under the maxim of every man owes natural allegiance to the king, whom he may have been born in any of his realms or dominions. That's kind of where this came from. So anyway, the natural allegiance, according to common law, was perpetual and difficult to sever or alter. Basically, the English believed once an English subject, always an English subject. So America, of course, went to war against this natural allegiance in 1812. In early America, the common law rule of natural allegiance was discarded, as well as the rule of automatic citizenship to children born to aliens, regardless of their condition. So again, we have a historical rooting in the idea that, just because you're born here doesn't mean you are an American. So the general rule back then was that if children were born to transient aliens or temporary sojourners, they basically remained aliens. Early states meaning U.S. states, also required aliens who desired to become domiciled within their limits to first renounce any allegiances to any other government and pledge their allegiance solely to that particular state. So back then, therefore, a child born to domiciled alien parents was born within the allegiance of the state, even if the parents themselves had not been naturalized, and would be considered a citizen of the state and a United States citizen. So there's where the natural born citizen came from. But again, this is a very complex problem. This is a very complex issue, and it has been fought in the courts in the past. And we'll have to see what happens here in the future. So there is a revised statutes. The Section 1992 of the U.S. Revised Statutes from the same Congress who had adopted the 14th Amendment had enacted into law and confirmed this principle: all persons born in the United States and not subject to any foreign power, excluding Indians, not taxed, are declared to be citizens of the United States. So based on the past ruling, you're looking at a possibility where there is a line that basically says not subject to any foreign power. So Thomas Jefferson pointed out that aliens are subjects of a foreign power. So therefore, the statute could be changed to where it could say all persons born in the United States who are not alien, excluding Indians, not taxed, are declared to be citizens of the United States. Now, Senator Trumbull stated during the drafting of that statute, okay, I lost my place. Hold on. Debates said that its goal was to make citizens of everybody born in the United States who owe allegiance to the United States. And he was talking about if the Negro or the white man, because again, keep in mind, slaves were still in place. If the Negro or the white man belonged to a foreign government, he would not be a citizen. So, yeah, there's historical references both ways. And I think this is part of the reason why we have such a disparaging difference. Now, a framer of the 14th Amendment's first section, John Bingham, said that Section 1992 of the U.S. Revised Statutes meant every human being born within the jurisdiction of the United States of parents not owing allegiance to any foreign sovereignty is, in the language of your Constitution itself, a natural-born citizen. So this is the guy that wrote the 14th Amendment. He's basically saying that no, as long as the human being born within the jurisdiction of the United States, but the parents don't owe any allegiance to any foreign sovereignty, would be considered. So, yeah. So there's a back and forth. We're going to have to see how this thing comes about, but I'm sure a lot of this is going to be dug and delved into legally wise by this. And that's, by the way, that's part of the Federalist blog. That article or that part that I was talking about is part of the Federalist blog about the whole thing. You can search it up and you can find it. There's plenty of other information that's here about it. So we'll just have to see what happens. All right, folks, that is it for me for this evening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. Once you are signed up and signed in, make sure you search up the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to be sure that you get notified every time I go live. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. And before you take off, make sure you hit all those thumbs up buttons and like buttons across all of my platforms, whether it be X, Facebook, YouTube, and of course the aforementioned Rumble. Have a great rest of your evening. We will see you tomorrow night. And yeah, good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.